Greetings. This is Rosalind Parks with National Network View News. On tonight's show, weekly NNV contributor Brian E. Muhammad provides insight on the recent social upheaval in South Africa, resulting in over 100 deaths, injuries, thousands of arrests, and millions of dollars in property damage. The founder of Heal Thy Life Center, Sister Maryam K. Muhammad, will share how her spiritual life coaching is addressing the overall health condition of women and girls through hands-on workshops, health seminars, lectures, and retreats. Later in the show, an interview with poet, artist, social activist, and podcaster Ankhet Rumi will shine light on her art, transcendental poetry of existence, and social justice. Before we get into the top news, let's do a recap of the current events we've recently covered. My guest, Sister Sherry Muhammad, founder and director of Asiatic Minds Online School, and Kadira Muhammad, family lore instructor, shared information about Asiatic Minds history, social studies, and family lore classes, and the importance of students exploring their own family history. Now, Sister Sherry, on your last appearance on our show, you spoke briefly about what inspired you to launch Asiatic Minds Online School. Can you expound more on that and tell us about your background and how it evolved into online education?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question. I believe that I did share about my children the last time that I was on the show,
Yes.
that they are the main reason for Asiatic Minds, for me, for developing into a school. I will also add that the time that we're living in now, the time that it's time to separate, that plays a major part also in Asiatic Minds being an online school, because we have to do everything that we can within our reach in order to help our people have the opportunity to separate from this enemy school system, which has totally cut us off from our roots.
Weekly contributor Dr. Akili Muhammad discussed the latest news in the COVID-19 pandemic and the best way to produce an adequate immune system to increase confidence in surviving this pandemic. What do you say to those who are focused on going places now that the world, quote unquote, has opened up?
Let's just use a common thing, young man in jail. And then he starts to get an idea, okay, I'm going to be free. And they let him out of his cell. He gets to the place where they give him his personal belongings back, and he's getting ready to walk out the door. And then somebody pulls him back and say, we got another charge of putting you back in jail. To me, that's what a lot of people are experiencing right now. They thought, because they were pushed with this propaganda, that vaccine was going to change everything and make everything better, and that the world was going to get back to the way it was supposed to be because of vaccinations. And I personally have seen many people complain that they were bullied, they were tricked, and they were pressured by family members or co-workers to get the vaccine.
Dr. Akili Muhammad also provided an update on the Delta variant cases that are rising across America and around the world. Now, Dr. Akili, can you explain to us what a variant is? We've heard a lot about this Delta variant in the news lately. What is a variant?
Yeah, so that's a variant would be something that has changed from the original one that they find, or the initial one that they study. And I guess a good analogy would be like a person like me who doesn't necessarily have the darkest of skin, right? If I was to go out and spend a long time out in the sun, I don't recommend this, but I'm just using this as an analogy. If I was to put something on my skin to maybe protect my skin from the sun, or I was to put on a pair of sunglasses because the sun may be bright, or I may put on light colored clothes to give myself a little less of the absorption of that heat. These are simple things that I could do to try to handle the environment that I'm going into. And so that's what viruses, bacteria, and other germs do. Specifically for this discussion, speaking of a virus, they can do small things to try to help themselves survive.
NNV News anchor Willie Muhammad was joined by guest commentators Dr. Gary Clark and attorney Sadia Kareem, who discussed the recent incident involving a white woman dubbed the Victoria's Secret Karen after an altercation with a black woman apparently backfired.
Should these incidents be considered lightweight hate crimes?
Absolutely, they should be considered lightweight. No, not lightweight, major hate crimes. Because what you're seeing is the weaponization of the white woman's tears. You know, we can go to 1921 when we dealt with the Tulsa massacre. It started with the white woman's tears. We can look at what happened to Emmett Till. It started with the white woman's tears. And so it's a psychological weapon, emotional and psychological weapon that white women use, you know, with their privileged self to make it seem as if the accuser is the one that's in the wrong and they're the victim. And what ends up happening is these white woman's tears inflames the white man for him to do something and look down on the black woman or look down on the black man. And, you know, with a little bit of the backstory, the police officers have not done anything, because if you look at that video, that white woman tried to assault that sister. And then when she realized that she was being recorded, that's when she went into using her weapon, and the only weapon that she had was her tears.
Dr. Gary Clark and attorney Sadia Kareem discussed the recent protests for democracy in Cuba and whether America is fueling the protests.
Does America play a significant role in these three causes that are causing the unrest, or is it solely the responsibility of the Cuban government?
Oh, 100%. And not just, I mean, this is your neighbor. And America, you know, is the hidden hand, and the hidden hand exists, whether it's in Cuba, whether it's in Haiti, whether it's in parts of the Middle East and other parts of South and Central America. Yes, the hidden hand is there. And it's not a conspiratorial, it's the fact that America supports the quote unquote democratizations around the world and to export American style democracy. And so, yes, it takes place, but all countries do this. All countries fight to have a. When I say the superpowers do this, to have their hand. It's a question. It's like the pluralist model. It's molecules fighting, moving against one another. They're all fighting. And so, yes, it exists, and yes, America does play a role.
Dr. Gary Clark and attorney Sadia Kareem also discussed the recent accomplishment of 14-year-old Zaila Avant-Garde, the 2021 Scripps National Spelling Bee champion.
Just what do you think is just the overall significance of this young sister winning this spelling bee? Because I know you all probably came across some of the history regarding this as well.
Oh, I'm proud. I'm beaming for her family, and it's hashtag Black Girl Magic. You know, Dr. Clark said, you know, her name, avant-garde, meaning new and unusual.
Wow.
And so she broke the impossible for any little girl. And as he was saying, she's so multi-talented. You know, she has 3 Guinness Book World Records on dribbling a basketball. So not only is she athletically inclined, but she's a genius. She really is a genius. And, you know, I just commend her family, her parents, because they saw something in her and they facilitated that. You know, her dad asked her, you know, certain words to spell them. And he asked her, how did you know how to spell those words? It's because she read over 1,000 books. And so education, it was highly, and it is highly important in her household.
On last week's I Have a Testimony, the guests were Sister Medina and Nur Muhammad, who shared more of their family's experiences in the earlier years of the NOI.
Did you all like growing up, like you ever asked your mother any like questions specifically about Master Farah Muhammad or the Most High Elijah Muhammad?
Yeah. I asked my mother one time, where did he stay? And she told me he was way out. She said he would come pick me up and we'd go way out, Woodward, way out somewhere. And I found out from my father, he stayed in Ferndale, you know, and they went there for a picnic one time.
Yeah, that's right.
They went there for a gathering and they played baseball and stuff. Yeah, they often talk about their time.
Ferndale was one of the locations there was a Caucasian brother. His name was Wali Muhammad. He was known as the walking encyclopedia.
Yeah.
He stayed in Ferndale. Because he was one of the many who had what they considered a fine home.
Last week, I sat down with attorney Sadia Kareem and Rachel D. Graham to discuss the racist rant and arrest of a white man accused of harassing his Black neighbors in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. We would like to begin this segment by simply asking each of you to share your thoughts about this incident.
So the reality is, it wasn't until this video went viral until the people or the community, the neighbors got some type of justice. I was looking in the history of this particular man, and since 2017, he's literally been harassing the neighborhood. He started off with the HOA, the board, and on it was 3 Black members. One of the members had to sell her home because of the amount of harassment that this particular man forced upon her. But the fault was the police department, because there were many complaints that were filed with the police department to investigate this man before it escalated the way that it did, and they did nothing. There was a sister who there were additional charges, I believe, yesterday or today that were filed against him. Harassment, stalking. They found weapons in his home where he was shooting BB guns at the neighbors' vehicles. They found drugs in his home. I mean, just overall, he was a bad neighbor, but he was a terrorist in a particular neighborhood.
Attorney Sadia Kareem and Rachel D. Graham talked about the recent tweet from Congresswoman Cori Bush stating Black people aren't free. Regarding this tweet, was the Congresswoman being racist when she made this statement?
Absolutely not. She was not being racist. What she was actually doing was telling the truth. Anytime you tell the truth about the white supremacist establishment, they want to turn it around because they feel some kind of way, or they don't want the distraction, and they call it racism. Because if we look at the reality of July 4th was never about Black people being free. The truth and the reality was the independence of America was embraced because of keeping slaves enslaved. They were freeing themselves from the British, from Britain, because Britain didn't want to have slavery anymore. White America, the white colonies, they wanted to fight to be able to continue to keep their slaves. So when we look at the Constitution, we were never included in that Constitution. Actually, we were considered nothing but property in 3/5 of an individual based on voting rights.
Rachel D. Graham and attorney Sadia Kareem also shared their thoughts on Nicole Hannah-Jones declining UNC's tenure offer for a position at Howard University. Do you think she made the right decision to refuse the offer and decide to accept the position at Howard University?
Absolutely. I concur with everything that Sister Sadia said. I also want to go deeper, though, because if you look at the reasoning that the board chair Hussman gave, it was because he did not believe that her academia stood up to the muster test, if you will, that there was question around the research validity of 1619. Now, mind you, this woman has a Pulitzer. She has received a MacArthur Genius Grant, all the things, and actually was an alum of UNC's journalism department. And so let's go deeper and talk about that. If you look at the background of the man who was questioning her academic bona fides, if you will, he became a newspaper man by virtue of his birthright.
Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. Then weekly contributor Brian E. Muhammad will join us for our Global View segment, where he will give us insight on the recent social upheaval in South Africa. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Asiatic Minds. Online education. Helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Call now 502-219-4848.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
South Africa's inequality and insecurity has led to a crisis and social upheaval resulting in over 100 deaths, injuries, arrests, and millions of dollars in property and infrastructure damage.
What originally started as protests over arrests and jailing of former President Jacob Zuma shifted to violence and anger over the country's dire social and economic issues. Now a cleanup operation is underway after days of looting of shopping centers and businesses that disrupted supply chains and transport links. The government has deployed security forces to contain tensions in several provinces. More than 100 people have been killed and over 2,000 arrested. A week after protests started, President Cyril Ramaphosa visited the affected sites and says the economy has been hit hard.
Joining us is NNV Weekly contributor Brian E. Muhammad, Final Call News writer. Greetings, sir.
Greetings, Sister Rosalind.
Yes, sir. In your Final Call News article entitled Inequality, Insecurity, and a Major Crisis, you talk about the deadly violence and pillaging that shook South Africa and the days of public unrest. Why are there major social and economic disparities, dissatisfaction, and suffering in South Africa when it's the #1 economy on the African continent?
Well, I mean, there's a number of reasons. And, some people will say that after 24 years of the African National Congress, which is the ruling government, came to power in 1994. They're the first democratically elected government, of course, at the release of Nelson Mandela, who was the first president under the ANC and ANC rule. But in 24 years, after overcoming apartheid, after overcoming white minority rule, the people of South Africa are still in a dismal condition. And many people are blaming the ANC for its failure to lift the people or change the condition of the people after they came to power. And after many promises of prosperity, so to speak. I would say also, Sister Rosalind, that we have to take a deep look at the ANC and the ability to do. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said, never speak before you have the power to do. And there were many promises that was made when they came to power that just frankly never came into fruition. And so now there is a disparity between relatively filthy rich, both black and white, and because whites never relinquished the economy, and those who came to power never really took the economy out of the hands of the white minority settlers in the country. So now you have a situation like you have where the people have been suffering all this time, and now you see what you see in the streets. largely from that dissatisfaction that they have been feeling since the ANC came to power.
Has alleged that the mayhem, deadly violence, and pillaging that shook South Africa were deliberate. Who does he suspect is orchestrating the upheaval?
Well, President Ramaphosa, he's having political issues. I would say again, the ANC, the ruling party, is having political upheaval within the party itself. His predecessor, President Jacob Zuma, who has been under these corruption charges and was arrested earlier this month. Ramaphosa is implying that people who are supporters of his predecessor, Jacob Zuma, is to blame, and saying that the unrest that took place over these last few weeks was actually a deliberate attempt to destabilize the ANC government, and this is what he's implying. Now, we have to also note that his own defense minister just this week came out and made a statement that there was no evidence that there was a concerted effort to overthrow the government with these actions that took place. So they have a problem within the ruling government in South Africa that is now being played out in a very public way.
President Zuma charged with corruption.
Well, Jacob Zuma was, these charges go back to his years of rule. He ruled the country from 2008 to 2009 until 2018, when he was forced to resign, again, by the ANC party over these corruption issues and whatnot. But also there are charges that took place when he was the deputy president over a massive arms deal that he's accused of taking bribes in. Then he's accused of giving the inordinate amount of political influence to this family of South Asian or Indian people, the Gupta family. And where they had so much power and influence over the government itself of South Africa. So he's accused of a number of things, bribes and whatnot. But all of this stems from his years in power from 2008 to 2018, and some of it before he came to power as president, when he was deputy president of the country, going back to the 1990s.
Would you say his arrest was a catalyst for initial protests in the port city of Durban in KwaZulu-Natal, or what do you think about that?
Well, I think it was. I mean, I think that everybody agrees that the initial taking to the street was the dissatisfaction or the fulfillment of a threat by those followers. These areas that you named are what you would call strongholds of Jacob Zuma. This is where he's from. And in fact, when we look at the group called the Zulu group in South Africa, there has always been a historical issue between them and the ANC, and Jacob Zuma comes from that people. See, and so initially, yes, they took to the streets in protest of him being charged and arrested. The charge that he's arrested in was not the corruption. The charge was a contempt of court charge because he refused or did not answer the order to come answer questions about one of the corruption charges, I think back in January or February of this year. So they found him guilty of contempt of court and sentenced him to 15 months in prison, and which is where he's at now. And in fact, there was a standoff, if you will, with the judicial system when they gave him that sentence at the end of June, last month at the end of June. They gave him this sentence, and his followers were saying that, well, he's not going to jail, and he refused to go. Right. And it was a standoff, and they even said, if the police come and get him, we will go to war with you. We will fight you. And they threatened all kinds of public disturbances if that was the case. Well, they never came. He turned himself in. So even though he turned himself in, they still took to the streets because they felt it was an unjust charge of contempt of court, and to put a man at 79 years old, former hero of the anti-apartheid movement, because he is famous as one of those who struggled and even spent time in jail with Nelson Mandela before they came to power. So his followers, I would say, just threatened to go to the streets, which they did.
Now, the Final Call news article quoted Abdul Akbar Muhammad, international representative of the Nation of Islam, who said, "The people are suffering. If you look at who they call looters, most of them are going for food. What role has the high unemployment rate and the destruction of the infrastructure had on food supply and access?"
Well, let me say this about that before we answer that directly. When former President Zuma's people went to the streets, this was a political threat that they, I guess, in their eyes, made good on. But what you saw as what they're calling looting and people going into the stores and taking food and different things like that, that is a separate thing than what Zuma's people was in the streets for.
Okay.
See, the people took to the streets out of dissatisfaction and out of, again, this disparity that we spoke about, that you asked about earlier. You see? So Brother Akbar Muhammad, what he was saying was that when people are going for food, that means either they have no food or they don't have access. See, and this is the problem. Now, you asked in that the part of the question that the part of the question that you asked. What was the last part of that question you asked me just now?
Oh, I asked about the unemployment rate and the destruction of the infrastructure.
Yes. So now we have a situation in South Africa now where the people took to the streets and the damage that was done. Now you have the damage in the stores. And of course, the after effect is the same stores that supplied your needs. Now those are destroyed. You're still hungry. So now you have a problem. The issue of the infrastructure, that goes back to the blame that President Ramaphosa was talking about. That he felt that these were deliberate actions because the infrastructure was damaged by those who went to the streets in the name of their dissatisfaction over Zuma. So that was a political, and that was the implication in some people's minds, that this was more than even just the hungry masses hitting the streets, but there's also a political dynamic because of the infrastructure that was, I'm talking about waterways that was damaged. The ability to do trade. They began burning trucks, over the road trucks that was bringing goods and whatnot into areas. This that's when you want to disrupt a society, when you start burning things like that and ruining again the water supply and all of that, which got ruined in this melee. That wasn't the mass of the people. That was somebody who was making deliberate actions against the government. So it's two things going on: the hunger issue, as well as the people who have a political grievance. And unfortunately, it appears, I don't, the actual fact of it, but it appears that they're taking their political grievance to the destruction of South Africa as a government.
Okay. Brother Brian, as always, thank you for your insight. I know you're going to keep your ear to the ground for what's going on in South Africa and across the world, and have more to speak with us about next week.
Thank you, Sister Rosalind, once again.
Yes, sir. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. Coming up, we will interview Maryam Muhammad, the founder of the Heal Thyself Center. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
Heal Thy Life Center educates women and girls on how to live healthier lifestyles through workshops and seminars, while simultaneously providing them with products to maintain their health and the health of those in their care.
Heal Thy Life University, a healing school designed just for you. Most healing schools teach you how to become a healer as a profession. Here at Heal Thy Life University, we equipped you with the proper tools and skills to heal yourself at a pace comfortable for you. Our courses are designed to be taken in the order you desire. The only prerequisite is that you come with an open mind, ready to heal. You deserve it. We look forward to seeing your enrollment at Heal Thy Life University.